Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, and thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Matthew and to his team of Colin Ware and Keith Bear for our fascinating last session. I'm delighted to share with you that I'm joined in this session by Izzy Azeri, the co-founder of mabl. mabl is a leading intelligent test automation platform focused on CI and CD. And in this session, we're going to hear how financial firms are accelerating digital transformation by making good use of automated testing. So that said, it's my great pleasure to hand over to Izzy. Izzy.
Thanks a lot, Justin. Appreciate that. And it's great to be here, everyone. I appreciate everyone attending today's session. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And let me just go full screen here. Great. So as Justin mentioned, today's talk is around accelerating digital transformation by leveraging test automation. And the genesis here is that as we've talked to lots of customers in the financial services sector, they are moving aggressively towards adopting accelerated development practices like Agile and DevOps to really kind of make that shift towards digital transformation. But oftentimes, testing is an area that they've either haven't thought about or ends up being a blocker or a bottleneck. And so this discussion is different strategies that customers can use to not only make testing better, but make testing an advantage when it comes to digital transformation. And I'll go through a couple of specific customer examples as well. So, oh, sorry about that. Sorry, my slides are moving too fast here. All right, so as background, I'm one of the co-founders of mabl, an intelligent testing platform. Started the company about 3.5 years ago. This is my second kind of early to mid-stage tech company. I was also the founder of a company called Stackdriver, which was acquired by Google back in 2014. At mabl, I spend most of my time in the field with customers, especially enterprise clients like NCR and Charles Schwab, Liberty Mutual, and others. And I've worked at lots of different tech companies that you'd recognize as well. So first, what I wanted to just cover is why customer experience is really the driver for digital transformation. And obviously, as we know, customer experience is so important when it comes to building a great relationship and a great product for customers. But one thing I was surprised at as I put this presentation together is that over 60% of consumers would change banks over a poor customer experience. And that's very significant. And that just shows that, if we don't invest in customer experience, we'll lose our customers, obviously. But they also want a very consistent customer experience when it comes to the way they engage. So whether that's from a mobile application or whether that's from a web application or even mobile web browsers, they want a very similar experience. And obviously, e-commerce companies have led the trend here in terms of customer experience for decades. But now it's on to financial services where we really need to make sure we invest in an omni-channel experience for our users. And this is from the Salesforce financial services report trend that came out last month. In addition, and this probably isn't new, that COVID accelerated mobile adoption. If you were here at the Financial Forum about 6 months ago, I was presenting along with Natalie Charlot from NCR, and she was talking about how the highest priority for them at NCR after COVID was accelerating all of their mobile priorities. And one interesting data point here is that mobile is not just about the millennials, right? Nearly 80% of baby boomers use a mobile banking application to access their financial institution. And I was just kind of curious, so I did my own research and texted my mom a couple of days ago, and you can see the text on the right. Even my mother, ecstatically uses a mobile app to access her banking needs. So investing in mobile is significantly important when it comes to digital transformation as well. And lastly, we all know banks are, large companies, financial institutions have lots of resources, but costs are important as well. And so one of the biggest investment areas that financial institutions are going through right now is around updating their legacy IT infrastructure to support this new wave of technology and products and experiences they're trying to bring to their customers across the globe. So as customer experience is driving digital transformation, what are some strategies that you can leverage when it comes to testing supporting that transition? So first is ensuring that your tests are actually moving to somewhere that you don't have to manage that infrastructure anymore. So I think gone are the days where we have to call the IT department to provision a bunch of servers, to run a bunch of tests, and then that infrastructure needs to be managed after that. Moving testing to the cloud not only increases flexibility, but allows you to scale very, very quickly. Now you can spin up thousands of test containers, load them with browsers, and execute those tests at scale immediately without having to wait for a provisioning service from IT. The other benefit of moving to the cloud is that you can now harness the data, right? There's so much data mabl is collecting when it's running its test in the cloud, like screenshots and performance information. And all of this information can be put through machine learning models to provide insights back to users, something that never existed when it came to on-prem testing. But as you all know, and we've seen in the world, when we move to the cloud, there is more exposure from a security perspective. So we encourage all of our users to have best practices when it comes to running infrastructure in the cloud. So the first thing is integrating with your SSO system, which we support. Secondly, requiring multi-factor authentication for any access to the application, and also implementing role-based access or granular access controls when it comes to the infrastructure. So there's a lot of kind of safety protocols that we put in and that we encourage customers to take advantage of when they move test infrastructure to the cloud. The second strategy is around leveraging this intelligence that we've all heard about throughout the world. And so many people, especially in financial services where there's a lot of manual testing involved, are somewhat afraid of this because they think this is going to put people out of jobs or business. But the reality is machine learning and AI enable better performance and easier testing than you could have ever done before. So they enable low-code testing where testing can be democratized across any skill set. So manual testers now can become automators. It also enables intelligent automation so that not only are things being automated through the pipeline, but they're intelligently automated to drive efficiency. And how this works is that you can now create tests from a low-code perspective in a very componentized fashion, and these components can be reused across a whole team, as opposed to creating one test for one simple user journey. In addition, machine learning enables kind of auto-healing of tests where it's intelligent enough where developers are shipping software and it looks at the different elements on the page. And if any of those elements changes, it's able to intelligently fix that test. And if that test succeeds, you move on and you don't spend most of your time fixing these broken tests. So there's a lot of power in this AI and ML capability that you don't even have to do anything to harness. It comes with the platform. Another area we've heard from our financial customers as critically important is not only testing the application as it stands, but actually testing the full end-to-end view of a customer's journey. So really that full customer experience. And to put that in perspective, you can think about a large brokerage company, for instance, where a user would log in to the web application. After they log in, they perhaps would do a trade in the application. And then you'd want to validate that that email for the trade was actually sent to the user. You'd want to validate the contents of that email match the contents of the web application. And then perhaps you want to come back and validate that at the end of the month, the account statement which is a PDF document, also matches both the web application as well as the email, right? This is a full end-to-end test, which we see a lot of financial institutions trying to automate, as opposed to doing one test one way, the email manually, perhaps the PDF in a different way. So there's an opportunity to really combine that and drive efficiency in the testing process, but also drive more coverage from a customer perspective as well. Now, when we think about testing, historically, a lot of financial institutions have been doing API level testing for their different components or their different endpoints or their different infrastructure, but then also doing web testing for the front end or the user experience. And what we've seen is now there's an opportunity to combine both API testing and UI testing into a single platform. What this allows for is democratizing testing. So with mabl, we have a low-code approach to API testing. So now you can have, again, people who are non-technical be able to help in API testing, which removes a lot of the bottlenecks and accelerates really time to market, time to test. But also you can use that data from the API to actually inform or test in the web application. So if you do an API call, for instance, and get data back, you can actually use that as a variable or data-driven testing for your web app. So it allows you to really integrate those two different components, really accelerate delivery of the application, but also increase the overall test coverage, because now you can do a lot more API tests in a fraction of the time that you could before. And one more kind of strategy here that we've been hearing actually a lot of, we had our customer advisory board in October of last year with our largest customers around the world. And one thing they were pushing us for was they're looking to standardize on a single solution. The reasons they're looking to do this are really twofold. One is so their users aren't having to context switch with so many different, kind of tools and languages those tools are written in, and different expectations for data and output of the tools. So looking to really standardize to drive efficiency, but they also want to cut costs, right? Cost is important to them. And if they're able to consolidate the number of tools that they're using, they are able to cut costs and drive efficiency in their organizations. So this is a big theme that I've seen from our largest financial institutions. So as we talked about, here are the 5 different strategies that you may want to consider to really accelerate digital transformation, and specifically the testing component of digital transformation. So it's not as much of a bottleneck, but it's an accelerant to your movement to deliver new features to the market. Out of all of these, I think the things that are probably new and innovative here are the ability to have low code capabilities for both functional, web, and API, and then leveraging AI and ML to drive efficiency and save time. So moving on from strategies, maybe we can talk about specific examples of companies that have accelerated their own digital transformation. So the first example here is NCR, which is a very large multi-billion-dollar company that delivers software and hardware solutions to the financial services market. One of their challenges was they basically had 2 different teams and multiple different products they were using for API testing and functional testing. And this was basically delaying the release of their software because they had to wait for both of these different teams to work together to be at the right point at the right time. What they've actually done is they've implemented mabl in the cloud, so in a very secure fashion. mabl has been integrated into their overall workflow, including their Jira trouble ticketing system, which is an on-prem Jira service. And now they have a single team that's able to not only create functional UI tests, but also API tests in a very low-code fashion, and now able to actually use one product and have one kind of context for how all of this testing is done, one set of results for all of these tests, and kind of one kind of platform where they can all collaborate, whether that's the QA team or the manual testers, all doing this together, along with API tests, which have historically been done by more technical folks. So it's really driven not only efficiency, but accelerated their time to market since COVID has hit, and accelerated their ability to deliver new products to the market. NCR is also a good example where not only are they using mabl on many of their customer-facing applications, but also on Salesforce. So NCR has done a really, really great job automating many of the manual things that they were doing on Salesforce by using mabl. Another example is a company called Arch Insurance. This is one of the largest insurance companies in the world, with operations in the US, the UK, and Australia. And one of their big challenges was, as their development teams adopted Agile, they moved from, I think, 3-month sprints to 1-month sprints. They were doing a lot of testing using some legacy scripting tools, as well as manual, and testing wasn't keeping pace with the development teams. So they ended up implementing mabl. In a very, very short period of time, they were able to increase the testing rate to 3x what it was previously. So that not only allowed them to move faster, but also drove efficiency in terms of the resources, where now the testers, since they have more time, can do a lot more exploratory testing versus actually being the bottleneck of preventing the development teams from releasing as they adopted Agile. This is a great example of a kind of large global company. And not only did they have teams onshore, so both in the US and the UK, they're also using an offshore team in the Philippines. So this is being used across the globe by lots of different people, not just in headquarters. So maybe a use case you may be able to relate to. And the last use case here, I'm not able to share the name of the company, but it's a very, very large risk and compliance software company based in New York. They work a lot with the SEC. And one of the things that they did last year was they took one of their legacy applications, which was primarily a desktop application, and they decided to completely rewrite it in a React framework, which is very dynamic, and run that application as a SaaS application in the cloud. But as they did that, they were going to use the same tools, including UFT and manual testing, to test that application. Naturally, what the developers said is, we're moving this application to a SaaS application. QA folks, we need to update what you're using from a test perspective. The developers also wanted to get involved with testing as well. So this company implemented mabl late last year. Now they have both developers using mabl for component and API testing, but also QA and testers using mabl for functional and end-to-end testing in a single platform. And they're able to collaborate on all of the results. So there's no kind of tug of war going on. They're all using the same data, the same test output, the same root cause to figure out when there are issues in the platform. So those are just 3 examples of real use cases of how companies, large financial institutions, have put this to work. But maybe just to summarize, obviously we're all familiar with customer experience and how important it is, and it's even more important now in terms of accelerating digital transformation. And there are new innovations out there from a test automation perspective that will absolutely help you. And there are referenceable people you can talk to of how they've implemented these technologies to really accelerate time to market, but also increase test coverage. And if you're not familiar with mabl, mabl is a SaaS application, which really makes it easy for your entire team to participate in quality, right? It's very easy to create reliable tests. Teams are able to do that in a unified platform across web, API, and mobile web testing. They're able to get great results out, which drive actionable feedback, but also really test the way your users use your application, not the way perhaps you've designed it to be used. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, Justin.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Izzy. Perhaps you could take off the screen so people will be able to see both of us.
Yep.
Stop the screen share. That would be great. Thank you. Yeah, I have a question, something that struck me as you're going through, that I was wondering, one of the things that I've seen from the QA vector analytics work that I lead on, we're helping firms measure the effectiveness of their quality programs and the efficiency, you could say, of their quality effort, how much bang they're getting for their quality buck. And one of the things that we've seen from that is that when people take the journey, as traditional firms tend to, from waterfall to agile, there's a temptation to cut the resourcing for quality. Let's get rid of those guys in QA. We'll just get people to scrum and fix their own problems, and somehow magically it'll all work. The people who do that find that quality goes down the proverbial tubes.
Yep.
The people who actually, if anything, increase their spend on quality in that transition achieve both the goals of going agile and maintain quality at the same time. So when I was watching your presentation, I was wondering whether the key issue is the quality experts need to do more DX-oriented quality planning. With effective DX quality planning, does that then mean that you can make your developers more efficient in delivering quality, and then you can in fact reduce your specialist resourcing?
Yeah, I think what we've seen, at least from a customer perspective, when teams move from agile, from waterfall to agile, they almost want to compartmentalize testing, whether that's moving from a QA team to developers, or from a QA team to another dedicated QA team. What we've seen be most successful is quality being an overall theme and a priority for the whole engineering team as a whole, as opposed to one kind of dedicated subset of that. And when you do that, it allows for everyone to kind of participate in quality, whether that's early in the development cycle where developers perhaps are doing quality tasks against their local branch, and then whether that goes into the CI pipeline. And so now developers are releasing those branches into the master, and those tests are happening at scale and are being reviewed by perhaps automation engineers, or whether that's at the end where everyone, including business analysts, are doing testing and participating in that as well. We've seen that be the most successful, where it's not dedicated, but it's a shared responsibility across all teams.
And how does using mabl help me deliver that? Is that focused around the planning? I mean, that's what struck me from what you were showing, that it was a lot of the planning thinking for the application is going to be where that takes root. If you don't do it at the front end, it's not going to magically show up in the execution.
That's right. Yeah, planning is so critically important when it comes to proper execution, but it's also around having the capabilities of the way people want to test. So for instance, with mabl, we have a command line interface. And so as a developer, I can use the command line or the CLI to do all of my testing needs, right? I can just type a few commands and I'll kick off a bunch of tests. I can then immediately get those test results back into my CLI to see what happened. But also as an automation engineer, I can create these tests using the mabl kind of UI or the trainer in a fraction of the time that I could if I was writing scripts. But if I also want to write some JavaScript, I can do that as well. So we kind of bring those different aspects of the product. One of the things that we've done is what you talked about earlier, which is like, how do I measure my quality? And so one of the things that mabl has done is we've got a feature called test coverage. So now what we can do is map your mabl tests to all of the pages in your application and understand if you have test coverage against those pages. And not only do I have tests, but do I have assertions on those pages? Of my most complex pages, do I have tests on those pages? So there's a lot of kind of information that can be shared now across the whole team in terms of how am I doing from an overall quality perspective.
Were there areas that you find that mabl as an application or as a solution is better fitted, or styles of development where you're a better fit for your customers?
Yeah, so mabl is probably the best fit for web applications that are frequently changing. So those could be in an agile development process, or even more modern applications like React or Agile frameworks. And then C, also packaged applications where people are spending a lot of time with manual validation like Salesforce. So those are probably the best fit for people to use mabl for.
In our earlier session, we had a representative, Jan from Source Labs, who was talking about the shift that he sees in financial institutions to using software as a service. And that fundamentally leads to a shift in what's required from their test applications and test solutions. How are you seeing that impacting on your work?
Yeah. We also see the same trend of financial institutions adopting more and more SaaS applications. One of the biggest challenges that these companies are now facing is these vendors like Salesforce and Workday and others are updating those SaaS applications all the time without necessarily the customer being aware. And so now that application, which used to work, but now has been updated, broke all my customizations that I'd done, for instance. And so it's challenging for them to kind of go through that process because they never expected that, right? Before you bought a packaged application, it just used to work, and then I don't have to update it unless I do a patch. And that patch is based on my schedule, not the vendor's schedule. But now vendors are doing this continuously. So, staying ahead of that, I think, is one of the challenges we see when it comes to SaaS application adoption by financial institutions.
So you're talking there about the application layer, but there's also the UX layer where exactly the same thing applies, because pre-SaaS, the UX layer was part of the application, and the updates came the same way. Now the UX is actually being provided by Chrome and Safari and so on. And the same challenge that you've just described arises, is that Chrome do an update overnight that they didn't warn anybody about. And so the UX breaks. Is that something that you're seeing occurring increasingly often as well?
We do. We absolutely do. That's one of the reasons that we support multiple different browser versions, usually moving to the most current, so that customers can be able to test in the most current, because usually, since the vendor is pushing the most current, you can test in the most current as quickly as possible. But then it's also, that it worked in Chrome, but now I'm on Chrome on my Android device and it's not working there.
Right.
So having the ability to do that easily is also the tricky thing too.
And I guess that's all been accelerated with lockdown all over the world, because I know I am using some of the even right now, there are applications I'm using as we're speaking via Chrome, via Safari, via my iPhone. I don't have my iPad to hand, but could easily. And those are business applications, not just goofing off. So yeah. How is that changing the way that you need to provision your solution to your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when COVID hit, as I talked about with NCR moving to mobile first, so many of our customers moved to mobile first. And so about 2 weeks ago, we released the ability for customers of mabl to not only test in browser-based apps, but mobile web. Literally with a few clicks of the same test, I can test my application in responsive mode, for instance. What we're developing right now is moving mabl from purely mobile web and API and web to be native mobile friendly. So you'll see that being released from us later this year, where we support the full native app experience, both on Android and on iOS.
Izzy, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate what you've been able to share with us today. I want to thank you. Thanks again, Izzy.
Thank you.